Caitlin Clark has made the team. Shocker, I know. The real question is, are the coaches going to have the guts to do what's right and make her the starting point guard? Are the coaches going to have the guts and do what's right to make her the starting point guard?
Mitchell, be mad at me. I don't care. Alyssa Thomas didn't make the team either. Oh, shit. I know who I would remove for Alyssa Thomas. I'm not telling you. Y'all not attacking me.
World Cup. Now, when it comes to the ATL Barbie Angel Reese, I just want to wake this up because there were so many people, so many haters who said that, yeah, Angel's just going to be a model. She's just going to do her brand thing. She's not going to take the league serious. And not only is she taking the league seriously, she was selected for Team USA to represent the country in the World Cup. And if that is not a testament that you can do it all and don't let not a single soul on this planet box you in, I don't know what else can do that for you.
Caitlin Clark made Team USA, not as a camp invite, not as a maybe pending final cuts, but as an actual confirmed name. On the roster, and by every indication floating around right now, she's not just filling a seat on the bench either. She's being positioned as the point guard, the engine, possibly even the captain, the player. The entire offense is expected to run through this summer. Do you think that kind of announcement would be met with universal excitement? Instead, within minutes, the reaction split the entire basketball internet in half, because almost immediately, this tweet started making the rounds, and it's worth reading in full before we go any further.
I personally wouldn't have selected Caitlin Clark, and it's because of her idol-worshipping fans. If Caitlin doesn't get the minutes or scoring opportunities they feel she deserves, they'll harass the coach and her teammates in person and on social media. They'll create false narratives, and they'll create a cesspool. She's attached to a level of toxicity that is very dangerous for her teammates.
That's not a random troll account with 12 followers throwing out a hot take for engagement. That's the actual sentiment floating around right now out loud in public from people who apparently watch this league closely enough to have opinions about roster construction. And the wildest part isn't even that someone thinks this. It's that so many people agreed with it fast enough for it to become one of the most shared reactions the moment Clark's name showed up on that roster.
I don't know if these stats is true or not, and honestly, I ain't watched enough of the W this year to really get into the Caitlin Clark banter, but I will say this. There are a lot of great hoopers in the league, and Caitlin Clark is indeed a great hooper. I seen somebody in the comments say, y'all just hate her because she white. That's false. I personally dislike Caitlin because she reminds me of all the white women that I don't like. The women that be like, they'll run up to somebody and damn near smack you to try to get their way and then point your direction and point the cops right to you and be like, he pushed me. No, ma'am, I was standing here first.
That's the part that's genuinely hard to wrap your head around. This isn't a case of a controversial pick where the numbers don't back it up, where you could squint and maybe understand the hesitation. Clark led the league in assists. She's one of the biggest draws the sport has ever produced, arguably the biggest. She's proven repeatedly over 2 seasons now that she can take over a game and make everyone around her better in the process. And yet the reaction to her making Team USA looks less like excitement for a stacked roster and more like people are mourning something they lost.
Just with the World Cup roster being announced this morning, what does it mean to you to be on that roster for the first time?
Yeah, obviously really exciting. Anytime you wear USA across your chest, it's a tremendous honor, and to be surrounded by so many great players, some of which have already won Olympic gold medals, some have been on the World Cup team before, and obviously I get to share it with AB too, so it's pretty cool and pretty fun, and I'm excited about it. Obviously, I got a ways to go to get there. August is a really, really busy month. It's a big month for us. It's a challenging month. We play a lot of really good teams, so take it one day at a time, but just a big honor, and I'm really excited.
So let's actually ask the question nobody wants to answer honestly out loud. Are WNBA fans, and in some cases certain corners of the media, genuinely upset that the best available point guard in the country made the national team? Because that's what this boils down to when you strip away all the noise around it. It's not really about toxicity. Not at its core, even though that's the framing being used, and it's not really about fan behavior either, even though that gets brought up constantly as the justification. It's about the fact that Caitlin Clark is about to be the guard, running the show, and for whatever reason, some people simply do not want to see that happen.
Caitlin, girl, what are you doing? Who told you you could go 1v1 with Asia Wilson? I want to know. I used to say I want to move through the world like a mediocre white man because their confidence is through the roof, no matter what. I want this confidence. I want to know what it is because that was Asia Wilson and it did not end well. And then she said, "Ooh, we in Gainbridge. They gonna call this flop." But they didn't. Girl, ain't nobody touch you.
Think about what Team USA actually looks like without her for a second, because that comparison is where this entire conversation should start. You've got Aya Wilson, an incredible player, arguably the best all around. Talent in the entire league, multiple-time MVP, the anchor of everything defensively and offensively. And after her, the star power on this roster drops off fast. That's not an insult to the roster, and it's not an insult to the players on it. That's just reality. Team USA has depth, IT has veterans, IT has championship pedigree stacked, up from years of dominance, but it does not have a second true needle mover, a second player who can single-handedly sell out an arena on name recognition alone before a single possession is played. Clark is that player. Full stop. She is the one name on this roster right now that gets casual fans, non-basketball fans, entire families who've never watched a full WNBA possession in their life to actually turn on the television and pay attention.
Caitlin Clark should be the logo of the WNBA and the NBA. After the 2024-25 NBA season, people were complaining that the ratings were collapsing. The storyline of Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese was better than anything that the NBA had produced in years, so everybody watched the WNBA. Caitlin Clark pulled everybody back into watching basketball. The following year in 2025 and 2026, the NBA had double the viewership in the NBA Finals because people are now buying storylines again. The same way that people wanted to see Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, people want to see Victor Wembanyama versus the New York Knicks. Caitlin Clark saved the NBA's viewership. So what Caitlin Clark did for basketball is bigger than just women's college basketball and the WNBA. Caitlin Clark should be the logo of the NBA because nobody would be watching the NBA at all if it weren't for Caitlin Clark.
And that's not a talking point pulled out of thin air. That's a fact you can measure directly in ticket sales and attendance. Figures. Every single arena Clark has played in over the last 2 seasons has seen attendance numbers spike, sometimes doubling or tripling what those same arenas were pulling in before she arrived on tour. Now imagine that same effect attached to a major international tournament, to the Olympics, to a stage with even more eyeballs, than a regular season road trip. Without her, you're looking at solid crowds built on Yenye loyalists and diehard basketball fans who are always going to show up regardless. With her, you're looking at sellouts, record streaming numbers, and casual eyeballs the sport has been chasing for over a decade finally showing up. So when people say the team would somehow be better off without her, the obvious follow-up question is better off how exactly, because it's certainly not better off financially, and it's certainly not better off in terms of exposure or growth.
Are the coaches going to have the guts to do what's right and make her the starting point guard? Are the coaches going to have the guts and do what's right to make her the starting point guard? I don't agree with it, but I can at least see the argument during qualifiers, right? Okay, she missed a whole season. She's coming back from injury. We haven't seen her play for a while. All right, we'll start with Chelsea Gray, and then Caitlin Clark will come in and be the backup. I don't agree with it, but I can at least see the argument, right? I can try to see the reasoning. But going into the actual World Cup itself, in the middle of the WNBA season, while Caitlin Clark is absolutely destroying the league, while Caitlin Clark is clearly the best point guard in the league, and with no Olivia Miles for them to agenda themselves into putting as the starting point guard over her, there's absolutely no way that Caitlin Clark doesn't start, right?
Here's where it gets interesting, though, because this isn't really a basketball argument at its core. No matter how it gets framed on air, nobody serious is out here actually breaking down Clark's assist numbers, her shooting efficiency, her impact on winning, and concluding the team is somehow worse with her in it. That argument doesn't really exist in good faith once you look at the tape. What you're actually hearing, dressed up in different languages depending on who's saying it and which platform they're saying it on, is discomfort with what Clark represents. She's still relatively new on the international stage. She's someone who's going to walk into this environment and almost immediately become the most talked about player on the entire roster, ahead of former MVPs, ahead of multiple time champions, ahead of players who've been carrying USA basketball on their backs for the better part of a decade. That's a hard pill for some people to swallow, even when it happens to be the correct basketball decision.
Not putting Caitlin Clark on the U.S. women's basketball team is one of the biggest failures of basic business that I can remember ever seeing in the modern world of sports. Over the weekend, Caitlin Clark sold out Washington, D.C.'s arena. Over 20,000 people showed up. They're all showing up for Caitlin Clark. WNBA viewership, it all is coming basically from Caitlin Clark. She would triple the overall ratings for these games by herself, and due to her popularity, she would make others popular who were playing alongside of her. With the WNBA and women's basketball begging for attention for decades, they have gotten an opportunity, the likes of which we haven't seen. Caitlin Clark is a comet streaking across the night sky, and instead of embracing her star power, you know what they've done? They have decided they would rather be a tiny league that is getting a fraction of the attention it otherwise should be.
And this is where the story actually has some real weight behind it, because this isn't Clark's first time dealing with this exact conversation. Remember the last snub? Remember when she was left off the roster entirely during her rookie season, despite outplaying half the guards who ultimately made the cut? And the explanation at the time was some combination of experience, chemistry, and not wanting to disrupt an already established group of veterans. Fair enough. Maybe in that specific moment, if you wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. But that decision aged about as poorly as a decision possibly can age. Ratings for that tournament were fine, respectable even, but nowhere close to what they could have been with the sport's biggest attraction on the floor, and the what-if conversation followed that entire team around for the whole competition. Quietly.I and the background of every broadcast, SO this time is different, and it's different in a way that actually matters for her career narrative. This time, Clark gets the chance she didn't get before. She gets to walk into a USA jersey with something to prove, not as a bonus piece added for marketing reasons, not as a name they included to sell a few extra jerseys, but as the actual floor general the coaching staff is building. The offense around from day one, that's a redemption story if there ever was one in modern sports. And it's exactly the kind of narrative that should be exciting for basketball fans, regardless of who your personal favorite player happens to be.
Through the heart of the WNBA season, Caitlin Clark has been really finding her groove. Last night, she notched her first triple-double of the season. Nice win on the road against Portland. She made a couple really high-difficulty shots, got to the free throw line a ton. But as usual, what impressed me most was her vision with the ball in her hand. Check out this play. The Fever love to run her off-ball screens. Here she has sort of a double screen, so she can decide to go left or... The key here is keeping her eyes up. They are hard hedging that screen with the bit. And meanwhile, Mo Billings is slashing to the basket. She has to be able to throw it over the top, find her hand, and set her up for the basket. Same thing here without the screen. She and Kelsey Mitchell are reading the defense. As soon as the big locks eyes with Caitlin, Mitchell's cutting back door. Clark has to keep her eyes up to see that and make the bounce pass. Great ball handlers keep their eyes up. They love to set her up with this high screen so she can just dump that ball to space and then make the read. Helps a lot when you have Aaliyah Boston on your team. She can go get a bucket pretty much whenever she wants.
Because let's be honest about what she actually brings to the floor when she's the one running an offense at a high level. This is someone who sees passing lanes before they even fully open up, who can pull up and shoot from ranges that force entire defenses to extend further than they're comfortable with, and who is already shown at the professional level over a full body of work that she elevates the players around her rather than just piling up empty stats in isolation. Put her next to Aya Wilson in the post, and you're not looking at a downgrade in any sense. You're looking at arguably the most dangerous two-player combination USA basketball has fielded in years. One player who can dominate inside against literally anyone, and one player who can pull defenses out to the three-point line and thread the needle to whoever ends up open. That's not a controversial basketball. Take dressed up as analysis. That's simply what good coaches do with genuinely good pieces on the roster.
If I was on the committee, I would have put her on the team. I was surprised. I think that we are having two different conversations. If you are talking about who should be on the roster based off of who makes the best team and who is the best to represent the United States of America as the U.S. Women's Olympic basketball team, that is a separate conversation from what would be the best for growing the sport. I am with all of you. The attention that the sport is getting is because of Caitlin Clark. She is bringing eyeballs. She is bringing sponsors. She is putting people in the seats. She is causing all of this conversation. She is. So from a growing the sport perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a business perspective, I completely agree. You can't argue the numbers. But from a basketball perspective, you can't. And what is conflicting for me, as a female athlete myself, when do we talk about the sport and not just the novelty and the drama and the eyeballs and the ratings and the division and the politics and the race? And all of those things are great for these shows, and all these things are great for social media, and all these things are great for the national debate around Caitlin Clark, which is fueling a lot of what's happening here. So I'm with it. Like, I've been doing this a long time. This is an entertainment business. I am aware of that. And that's why we get into it about who's going to be the face all the time. I'm like, yeah, this is a great player, but do they have polarity? Do they have spice? Do they have tension? Do they bring something to the table that makes you feel?
And here's something worth pointing out directly, because it tends to get buried under all the noise coming from the fan side of this discourse, that a lot of the actual players and coaches around the league haven't reacted the way some fans clearly have. Plenty of them have gone on record saying Clark earned this spot outright, that her numbers speak for themselves, without needing defending that the game ultimately respects production, and production is exactly what she's been delivering consistently for 2 straight seasons now. The disconnect here isn't really player versus player. Whatever the headlines might suggest, it's fan versus player, or more specifically, a certain segment of fans who've built part of their identity around resenting Clark's rise versus the actual basketball people, whose entire job is to evaluate talent objectively without the emotional baggage. That distinction matters a lot, because it tells you exactly where this anger is actually coming from. It's not coming from the locker room in any meaningful, widespread way, no matter how the story gets spun online, that it's coming from timelines. It's coming from comment sections, that it's coming from people who've decided for reasons that have very little to do with actual basketball, that Clark's success is something to be resentful of rather than something worth celebrating for the sport as a whole.
There was so much controversy. Caitlin should be on this team. Caitlin Clark shouldn't be on this team. You've been a part of it. And then people talked about it's the team. And you mentioned you don't have time to play together. Yeah. Did Team USA miss the boat in not putting Caitlin Clark on this team?
You know, it's really tough. I think every Olympic cycle, there's a story of a snub. And it is because the talent is so great. Yeah. I could sit here and make an argument for her being on the team, but that would require me to take somebody off. And when I look at this roster, I don't see myself doing that. If Caitlin had made the team and somebody else had gotten snubbed,
right,
and I could have made that argument, I would have looked at the roster and I wouldn't have been able to take anybody off. So that's the challenge of picking the U.S. women's basketball team. That's why we win gold, and that's why I'm hoping to see another one.
There is a section of Clark's fan base that has, at times, crossed real lines. There have been documented incidents of fans directing genuinely ugly personal attacks at opposing players, at referees making routine calls, at teammates who they feel aren't getting Clark the ball enough during close games. That's a real problem within the fandom, and it's not something to wave away just because it's inconvenient to admit publicly. Nobody, including Clark herself, has ever asked for that kind of behavior on her behalf, and she said as much directly on the record on multiple separate occasions when asked about it. But here's the part that gets lost in this conversation almost every single time it comes up. Punishing the player for the actions of a subset of her fan base doesn't make any logical sense as an actual roster decision. Every single superstar athlete on the planet in every sport has a fringe of fans who take things too far online and sometimes in person. That's not a Clark-specific issue. At its root, that's a modern sports fandom issue amplified heavily by social media algorithms, and it applies just as easily to fans of any major star in any major league you can name, using that fan behavior as a justification for why she shouldn't have made the team.